Hey guys, Kate Vapes here again, bringing you another video. Today we're going to be talking about my top 10 tips on converting from smoking to vaping. These tips are not going to be in any sort of order. They are not in my most suggested to least suggested or anything like that. But before we start, I just want to take some time out to say thank you guys all so much for liking and subscribing and watching my previous video. I did not expect to get that much support, and I just wanted to take some time out to say thank all of you. Thanks to all of you. Words are hard. That came out and did watch my video, so I appreciate it. So without further ado, let's jump into these tips. So, tip number 1, make sure you always have a charged device. There is nothing worse than getting in your car to go do something and finding out that your device has about half battery left and you will not be back for a while. So, always make sure that you have one device on the charger and one device in hand, and before you go out or before you go to bed, do a little switcheroo so you always have a device with the most amount of charge available to you. Okay. Tip number 2, find a flavor that's not too overbearing. So when you're first starting out vaping, you're not going to have a lot of flavors available to you. And make sure that you don't get one that is an extremely overbearing taste that you cannot vape all day. I did make that mistake in choosing some flavors that were really in your face and really great, but just not something that you could sit there and vape on all day. So make sure you choose something that is a nice, maybe fruity. For me, I had more of a dessert flavor profile, so I went with something that wasn't too crazy on the flavor, that I could just sit there and kind of puff on all day without getting really sick of that. Alright, moving on. Tip number 3, make sure that you know your state laws and regulations prior to starting vaping. This way you're not blindsided by anyone telling you anything. So if you're walking around in the mall vaping and you're not allowed to vape indoors in your state, you want to know that before you kind of feel like an idiot for being told that. I know when I initially started vaping a while ago, you could vape indoors where I was located, and when I moved to another state, you could not. So educate yourself on those rules and regulations. That way you already know what's going on. Right? And tip number 4, find a community for support or use QuitBuddy. I know I mentioned in my last video that I became a member of My Vaporium, and I use them as my support group, and I continue to. They are a great support group for me and a great resource for furthering my education as far as safety and building and so many other things go. But if you are just not somebody who's maybe into joining Facebook groups or joining these types of forums, another thing that I can recommend is the QuitBuddy. I have the QuitBuddy on my phone, and it is just an application that will tell you, will basically remind you, it's basically like a person. It'll remind you, like, have you still quit? And it'll tell you how long you've been smoke-free. Like you can see mine here, I've been smoke-free for 13 days. It's really motivating. It will tell you how much you've saved. So mine's still just adjusting. So mine says I've saved $135 since in basically cigarettes since I started smoking, and how much tar I've saved myself from putting in my body. And it
even has this nice little thing here at the bottom that says, I'm craving, and if you're craving for a cigarette, you click on that, and it will give you some kind of tip. Like right now it's telling me, drink a glass of water, it's a lot healthier. And if you don't like that one, you click it again. And sometimes it gives you little games and things like this, and I must admit I went through and I did a bunch of these one day just because I was bored and I wanted to see what would come up. So this one says rub the panel below to reveal a message underneath. So I'm going to rub it off. It says in 8 hours, excess carbon monoxide is out of your blood. Cool. Right. Sometimes you get a little game. Okay, here you go.
So like here's a game that you can play. And you just kind of keep clicking that until your craving has passed. And while you do that, have a vape. All right, moving on to tip number 5. Let's see. Okay, so my next tip is to do price comparison. Me as a new vapor, I have mentioned that I've had several vaping experiences that have failed, well, for myself converting. In one case, I did spend an extremely large amount of money on a device that I just way overpaid for. So when you are going to finally make the switch, always make sure that you are doing price comparison. Not everyone is looking out for your best interest. While the vaping community is an amazing community, not every shop owner is actually a vapor, and not every person is looking out for your best interest. And as a new vapor, you can get ripped off. So make sure to check your price points and compare with other locations, as well as check and see if your local vape shop has an online store. Sometimes they have online only sales and you can actually pick it up in store. So check out for one of those. Gotta have a vape. Alright, so moving on to tip number 6. Try different styles of vaping. There's just so many different styles. It's not like smoking cigarettes, okay? It's not whether do you smoke menthol or not menthol, or filtered or not filtered. You have like this new open world of choices and decisions to make. So try them all. There are tons of different flavor profiles, flavors, cloud chasers, flavor chasers, hot vapors, cool vapors, builders, pre-made, so many things. So try them all and find out where your niche is. If you find something that you find fun or more comfortable, more exciting, you are more likely to enjoy your vaping experience. Don't necessarily just try to find your favorite YouTubers and do their style. That's not always going to work for you. So find your own way. Find your own path. Okay. Tip number 7, don't add extra pressure to yourself by just getting rid of all your cigarettes. I have talked so much to so many people that I have met that have transitioned from smoking to vaping, and I see this one thing in all of us, or in the vast majority of us. Everyone still kind of has somewhere in their house their cigarettes. Like that last pack that may have had 2 or 5 or 10, or somebody commented in my last video they still had like 4 packs in their carton. I think that you just add extra pressure on yourself if you say, here are all my cigarettes and I'm going to throw them away. And you don't necessarily need to do that. If you still have your cigarettes around, I think that it adds an extra little bit of comfort while you are doing your transition. And every time you kind of start to crave on the cigarette, you just sit there and vape and vape and vape until it goes away. And it's okay to fail. If you fall through and you decide that you need a cigarette, it's likely that if you have been vaping for the last few hours and you pick up that cigarette, it's not going to be half as enjoyable as you expected, and that will help you through the transition process quite a bit. I know that even after just 8 hours of vaping for me, that when I had a cigarette in my first early stages when I was still smoking and vaping, it was just awful, because the vapor just tastes so much better. The flavors in here are so much better that when you compare it to a cigarette, or you haven't had a cigarette in a while and you've been vaping and you pick up that cigarette, it just tastes really awful. And that will really help in your transitioning phase. Okay. What are we on? Moving on to tip number 8. All right. is don't expect your initial investment to be cheap. Don't skimp out on it. Don't stop at your local 7-Eleven or gas station and pick up one of those Cigalikes. While those do work for some people, I don't think that will provide you with the best vaping experience. Don't walk into a vape shop and expect to spend $20, walk out with $20, and walk out with a good setup. I would expect to maybe be around somewhere between maybe 100 to 120 as far as initial investment for a good setup, depending on what setup you are looking for. And as a disclaimer, I am no expert, so yeah, those numbers could vary depending on where you're located. That's just what it was for me. Moving on to tip number 9, find a good budget juice, okay? When you go into vape shops, I know in my experience there has been a lot of premium juice, 30 mLs for 35 bucks. A lot of people get into vaping to save money. Some are looking to increase their health, various different things, but for a lot of people, saving money is a big portion of it. So you don't need to be buying any 30 ml premium liquid juice, especially when you're trying to quit and you are probably going to be vaping more than you will be maybe later on. So for myself, I started vaping initially with Mexos juice, which cost $6.50 per 30 ml bottle. I believe they also have 15 mLs or something smaller that are like $2.99 or $2.50, something like that. Super cheap, allows you to just try some flavors, find your flavor profile, and you're not spending $1 million on juice. Okay. And tip number 10, which I will say is my biggest tip, is education. Education, 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 safety, safety, safety. Find a good website, a good group of people who are willing to help and get yourself really educated on safety when using these devices. I would tell you that your number one priority would be to learn battery safety. In your early stages of vaping, you should be using regulated devices. They are going to have all your safety bells and whistles, or they should have all your safety bells and whistles. So if you focus initially on your battery safety, as you further your vaping journey, your vaping experience, you can look to educate yourself on other things such as your atomizers or your Ohm's law. But initially, definitely start out with battery safety, because every device that you're going to be using is going to be using a battery, and you want to make sure you are using that as safe as possible. So, alright guys, those are my 10 tips for transitioning from smoking to vaping. I hope that this has reached some of you and helped some of you, or if you are already transitioned, maybe direct some of your friends who you're trying to convert to vaping over here to watch this video. And that's it. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, click that pretty red button down there that says subscribe. And I hope to see you again in one of my other videos. Bye guys!